The bikes that you see at the Tour de France look so good. I bet you're thinking that you'd be super fast on one of these things and give everyone that cafe envy of your shiny paint, your wireless gears, and the super light wheels. But we probably have the same issue. The bank balance does not like these bikes because, I hate to break it to you, Tour de France bikes can be ridiculously expensive. So, I'm going to show you how to get these things at increasingly cheaper prices. Plus, I've got one way for you to get your hands on a genuine pro team bike. It's not necessarily cheap though. If I tell you that this bike, it's Tadej Pogacar's Colnago Y1 RS, it costs 15 grand. You might be wondering why. And I don't blame you. You've got to think of it kind of like this though. The Tour de France bikes are a bit like an F1 car in a way. They're highly specialized, and the ones that the pros ride, they are tuned specifically for speed. They will also have the best of everything. So these will be the fastest and the lightest frames from the manufacturers, and some, they even lose the paint to be as light as possible. The bikes will also have the best gears and the brakes available. They have the fastest tyres, their wheels will be changed to suit the day's route. Certain components will be from boutique brands because the riders deem them better. And even the saddles have 3D printed padding these days. Now, you can absolutely go out and buy all of these things if you like. In fact, you can go and buy Pogacar's exact race bike, but that's a very expensive hobby. Instead, this is the first way to save money. Completely give up cycling. I'm joking. The first thing that you can do is identify the cheapest bikes that are actually being used at this year's race. And that's where I've got your back, because I made a video at the start of the year ranking all of the bikes that you'll see at the Tour by order of price, which is quite nice of me. But to use the word cheap here in any form is a bit of a stretch. Yes, a bike like the new Cube Lightning will be about half the price of the top spec S-Works, but it's still going to cost you around 8 or 9 grand. Okay, if the cheaper bikes in the Tour are still a bit expensive, they certainly are for me, this is the next thing that you can do. Have a look at last year's model or the bike that has just been replaced by something shiny and new. Take the Tarmac SL8 for example. It has just been replaced by the Tarmac SL9, which is claimed to be 4 watts faster, which is pretty much nothing in the real world. But the good news is that the old SL8 has just dropped in price. And it's not just Specialized that does this. Canyon will slash their bike prices around launch, so will Giant, and their bikes were really well priced to begin with. So what you need to do is, when new bike time is approaching, just keep an eye on what has been launched recently and see if the bike it has replaced is still being sold. You could save loads on what a few weeks or maybe a few months ago was a top-end Tour de France race bike. But this doesn't save enough for me. I think we can save more. We know that Tour de France race bikes have the best of everything, but that is not always the best way for us general riders to go. When we talk about top frame sets, Dura-Ace group sets and other fancy kit, we're talking about fractional improvements over the mid-range versions. So if you want to save yourself some serious money, then forget about the Aeroad CFR and have a look at the second tier bike, the Aeroad CF SLX. Most of the time, you're going to get exactly the same aero credentials out the frame, the bar and the stem will be a fancy one-piece thing, and the gears will still be electronic. Second tier bikes can be also better set up for general riders. The carbon frame might be tuned to be a bit more forgiving, so you'll be comfier. The gears might be smaller to help us get up the hills, and you might forgo the same time trial tyres that a lot of pros use for something a little more well-rounded for regular roads. And to be honest, aside from a slightly heavier weight, all you're going to really notice is the vastly reduced price. But this is still not quite cheap enough. Time for the final stop on our quest for a cheap Tour de France bike. We have landed on Facebook Marketplace or eBay or wherever you buy used bikes in your area. Buying a used bike is by far the cheapest way to get your hands on a Tour de France machine. You'll find examples from pretty much every brand, and if you're willing to do the digging, because let's be honest, Facebook's search function is an absolute mess, you'll eventually find what you're looking for. Sounds good, right? Well, there are a few caveats with this method. The first is that you're buying a used bike, which means that unless you're buying from a really good seller, you'll probably need to replace some parts. Things like the chain and the bar tape are really good to change. The first because it's generally the most worn component, and the bar tape because it's got the old owner's sweat in it. But you've also got to be prepared for a decent amount of mechanical work. A bike that looks perfect in the pictures might need new bearings in the bottom bracket and headset. Doing those jobs might require new tools or just a lot of time if you're dealing with an integrated front end. When I'm buying a used bike, I simply ask the seller what state these things are in, not so much to save money, I just simply like to know what I need to buy ahead of time. There's already a good example of an S-Works bike with NV SES wheels for $5,500. That's an SL8. Perfect. But if you want something very special, then you can buy actual pro bikes. Teams like Visma often have an end of season sale at their service course in Belgium where you can go and buy the machines of the best riders. You generally have to sign up to their mailing list to find out about the sales, but that would be a great weekend trip to Belgium in my eyes. And then there are sites like Bike Room who have a bunch of options from various teams. It's hard to say how much these bikes have actually been ridden, but Bike Room at least offers a year's warranty, and from what I've seen of the team sale days, the bikes are in very good working order. The savings are pretty massive, and I have to say it'd be really cool to own an actual pro bike. So there you go, that's how you can buy a cheap Tour de France bike. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. You've been supporting the channel in an excellent manner. If you would like another video, it's just up here. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.